Now, I have to do a little bit of a plug for the next person because they're one of our sponsors. Yay. Let's give a big hooray for Microsoft. And talking today about the inclusive classroom, we actually have Troy Waller, who's the accessibility lead of Microsoft Education Australia. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I thought what I'd do is tell you a little bit about myself and my journey and how I ended up in this role. So I am a qualified teacher, and I was teaching for, well, this is my 20th year in education. And 16 of that was spent in schools, right? So that's where I came from. I spent most of my time actually teaching in Asia. So I was teaching spent 7 years in China, Korea, Vietnam, etc. So it was about 12 years collectively. And I came to the end of my sort of teaching time, and my wife, she's also a teacher, you know, she knew this was it. I couldn't do this anymore, so I decided to sort of go that sort of principal, vice principal track. So if anybody here is an educator, you know this is where you go when you've had enough of the classroom. And I got into a role and just hated it. It was absolutely horrible. So I started looking around for different jobs and stuff, and then there was this job at Microsoft that was advertised, and it said, you know, teacher ambassador, they called it. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe. You know, and I got to the point where I'd stopped applying for jobs that I didn't want, but this was like, okay, maybe Microsoft. What do they really have to do with education, kind of thing? So I made this application, and I went to the first interview, and it was like, wow, this sounds like a really interesting role. And then the second interview, it was like, I really want this job, and luckily I got it, right? So I'm in my 4th year in this role. But what happened was my boss said to me, he goes, why don't you do something around accessibility? I'm like, say what now? Why don't you build some workshops? Because I run workshops for teachers, right? That was my main job at that point. And it was like, why don't you do something around accessibility? And I was like, okay, wheelchair ramps. What's that got to do with technology? And that was the beginning of my journey. So as I said, now in my 4th year, this is one of my titles. For those of you that can't see what's up here, it says Accessibility Lead Education, which is a very generous term. But I'm still very much on a learning journey about all this, right? So that was one of the main reasons for me to come here for this few days. It was less about telling you about Microsoft as much as genuinely learning from you folks. So thank you. And those of you that you know, when you heard me yesterday sort of saying, I need to know, can someone help me? That was genuine. The slides for today, by the way, are there at aka.ms/today's stuff, and that's double S. And also I've put on the slides, which again are available to you, is all my social media connections. I've completely shut down my own personal social media, and it's the best thing I've ever done, but that's my professional stuff, so please connect with me. All right, enough about me, right? I want to tell you a little bit about Satya Nadella. So Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. He's the 3rd CEO of Microsoft. And what a lot of people don't know is that his son has cerebral palsy. So what happened for Satya is when he stepped into arguably, you know, one of the most powerful software companies in the world, he brought with him this desire for inclusion, equity, education, and these kinds of things as well. So if you look at the accessibility features for Windows 8, the list is, you know, whatever. But then you look at the accessibility features for Windows 10, and the line, you know, the list is really long, and it's getting better and better because he brought with him this valuing, right, of inclusivity. And so I wasn't in the organisation. I joined after he took over. But the fact that my role even exists, that, you know, education has an accessibility lead, just shows the cultural shift that has happened inside Microsoft, right, which is quite exciting. But he even changed the mission statement to read, our mission is to empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more. And I've underlined every person there. And I can tell you that, you know, Microsoft, you know, I've read articles about Microsoft in education, and it was called The Empire Strikes Back, right? This is how people see Microsoft, right? And you know, for me, coming from, you know, a very sort of, you know, education, you know, leftist-leaning political, you know, to all of a sudden be working in the corporate world, it's interesting, right? And it's challenging. But there's real people that genuinely care in the organisation, and there's a lot of really good stuff happening. And I know we can look at, you know, organisations like Microsoft and see the half-empty glass, but there's some really good stuff happening as well, and I'm really proud to be a part of it and excited to be a part of it. So what we did in education was we took the idea, we didn't invent this, right? You can tell that we didn't invent universal design for learning because no Australian would call it UDL. If you remember, spirit in a can. For those of you, from overseas, it's kind of booze, right? But universal design for learning is the idea of taking universal design principles and apply it to learning engagement. So there's a whole framework, right, around universal design for learning. And at Microsoft, we've adopted that as a framework that we're going to try to use in terms of making our classrooms, or making teachers' classrooms more accessible and what we can do to help them. So yeah, I'm sure you guys are right across, or at least know a lot about universal design. Universal design for learning may be something new, and I just encourage you to get in and have a look at that. It's a large framework, but what it does is it burdens the teacher a lot. Spare a thought for the teachers who are trying to hit 25 kids in the room and then have 5 kids with additional learning needs and all that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden we give them this UDL framework and say what technology does, though, is it takes a lot of that heavy lifting away from the teacher and away from the integration aides and people like that. So it's quite cool what we've got. So yeah, I have got so much to get through. I run whole day workshops for teachers in this, and I've got 20 minutes, right? So I know I'm talking fast, but I just want to get as much of this out to you guys as I can. So this is our philosophy. And we say inclusive education tools from Microsoft give more students personalised access to their curriculum, optimise educator time and improve learning outcomes. So what we want to do, and really for what it's worth, the framework, the lens I want you to have here is really the mainstream classroom. Okay, I do a little bit of work with some of the special needs schools, and a lot of that is sort of cognitive impairments, but really the bulk of my work is with mainstream classrooms. But students, we want to see them increase their independence and experience a reduction of stigma, right? Because kids would rather miss out than stand out. So being able to help them and use the technology to reduce that stigma and increase their independence is key. The biggest play, though, is educators are more empowered to engage every learner. If the teacher doesn't get buy-in on this or doesn't buy in on this, it won't reach the students. And that's just a reality, right? So it's very important that we help teachers to know that this is going to be something that is going to be advantageous to them, right? Not another thing. And then institutions build reputations as positive places that promote equity and inclusion. This is being recorded, right? So I've got to be really careful. That's for the principals, right? Because if the principal blocks the introduction of this technology or the introduction of additional learning needs technology, then it'll end. So we have to actually say to the principals, hey, this is good for you and your community engagement and that kind of stuff as well. There you go. The button stopped working. So our inclusive classroom is built on need, not on product, right? So, and this was something that I introduced. Instead of walking around talking to people about immersive reader and dictate and captioning in stream and things like that, instead what I wanted to do was I wanted to say, okay, this is the language that we use in schools, which is reading support, right? So when you go into a school, you hear about reading support teachers and reading support programs, writing support, math support, and also speaking and listening. So this is all NAPLAN, really, right, is what we're talking about here, which is, reading, writing, and maths. So in terms of reading support, and again, I'm not going to be focusing on every aspect of this, but in terms of reading support, we have this tool which was developed at a hackathon. So another thing that Satya Nadella, and I've got a bit of a man crush on Satya. I've never met him. Even calling him by his first name. But he introduced hackathons. So Microsoft staff can walk away from their jobs for a week or two and actually just work on passion projects and get together with people right across the business, etc. And so in 2015, a group of developers, marketing people, educators said, let's do something about dyslexia. So they came up with this thing called what was then branded learning tools, right? Now, can I get a show of hands who's heard of learning tools or seen it? Great, okay, cool. If you'd all put your hand up, it would have ruined my presentation, so I'm really glad you didn't. But it was called Learning Tools, but it matured to the point where people in industry were starting to use these tools as well, so we've rebranded it as Immersive Reader. Yep, okay. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a demo Immersive Reader. Now, this is largely visual. I will try and talk us through it at the same time. But you can see a piece of text here. Now, this is sitting in OneNote, but this will also work in Word Online. It'll also work in Outlook Online, and other things as well. But the scenario I like to paint is there's a little girl who's in grade 3, and she is faced with a piece of text. The bulk of her class is able to just access this text and get moving. She's dyslexic, and she has an aide who will come and sit with her, or maybe a teacher will come and sit with her and help her with the text, right? And for her, that's super embarrassing when the teacher comes and sits next to her, right? So a lot of kids will actually not display, right? They'll act out and misbehave, or they'll just sort of, wilt away into the background. But she comes to this piece of text. Now, the cool thing about this is, because it's native to Office, it means that in a one-to-one school, one device, if you get lost in, I got lost in all your acronyms and talk, you can get lost in mine now, right? So in a one-to-one school, everybody has the same device, and everybody has the same technology. So it's not special technology that she has to check at the door. This is technology she can take with her on her journey right through life. But what we've got here is inside OneNote, she's got a piece of text that she's been given all about Christmas, and then she can click on the Immersive Reader button, which sits just under the View tab in OneNote. So we do need to be connected to the internet. It takes a little moment to kick in, but you'll see in a moment that what happens for this is all the bells and whistles and buttons and colours and everything of the app are gone, and now we just have a piece of text, black text on a white background. So there's a number of icons that are around this piece of text. Now, the cool thing about this is the changes that this little girl can make to her text are all happening inside the document itself. So she's not needing to go out to her browser settings, or her, or the settings inside Word, or the settings on the computer or a Mac or whatever she's using. It all happens inside the app. So what happens first is she clicks on the text preferences button, icon, and she has the ability to increase and decrease the text size inside that piece of text, all right? So she can set that. And once she sets this, it will remain as is, right? So I've dialed it right back, but what happens is once she's set this up, every time she comes into this, into Immersive Reader, the text will look identical to how she set it up, regardless of what the original document looked like, right? Now, she can also increase the spacing, right? So when we know for things like visual crowding that the words and the lines and the letters can all run into one another, so she can increase the spacing there, and then she can accentuate that a little bit further by increasing the text size. And the cool thing about a lot of this was it was actually, we don't get dragged into the reading wars. If you watched Four Corners a little while ago, we don't get dragged into that. It's based on what teachers were doing. Okay, and there's a lot of research evidence to back what's available in here as well. We've got three fonts that research suggests are all very strong for people with dyslexia, and we also have the ability to change colours and themes, etc. All right, so we can be very trendy and be in dark mode, or white on black, black and white, etc. Now, what's really cool about this, though, is there's a little play button down the bottom, so that now when she hits the play button, this is what she gets.
Last Christmas holidays I played with my puppy Brandy. I sprayed water at her. I wrestled her and I played soccer with her.
So what's happening there is the words are being highlighted in sync with the voice. And you notice there's no Stephen Hawking here. This is an Australian female voice because it's reading the language pack on my machine and it's reading out to me. Now, I can slow it down, right? And teachers ask me all the time, can you slow it down? And I say, no, the real question, and those of you that use screen readers or know of people that use screen readers, is can you speed it up? Yeah, exactly right. So I know a little, and I know this is not going to be impressive to you, but it is to my teacher audience. I know a little girl who's in grade 6, who's dyslexic, and of course she plays it this fast.
We sat down together, we said jokes to each other, we played and played until I had to go into the house and eat lunch. When I was done eating, I went back outside and I reheard calls further.
Okay, so yeah, so yes, it can be sped up. The other thing that can happen in here is we have what's called syllabification, all right? You know, when you're teaching your own children to read, or your cousins or your nephews and your nieces, whoever, it's breaking words down into chunks. So what the AI is doing now is it's actually breaking the words down into syllables. So we see a word like together broken down to together. all right, and it breaks it down like that. We can also highlight, using the grammar options here, we can also highlight all the nouns, all the verbs, all the adjectives, and all the adverbs. And in terms of accessibility, we can change those colours. So if children are having trouble distinguishing colours, we can change those colours and make them more differentiated. And then we can also, if colours are they're completely locked out of colours, we can also throw the labels on there. So now we can see little V's above the verbs and little N's above the nouns and that kind of thing. Now, what's really cool about this, though, and I like to really stress this, is you noticed here on the screen that I've got, it says, I played tag with her. Tag is a noun. And then further on it said, but she tried to tag me. Same word, but now tag is a verb. And the AI is actually contextualising the parts of speech, which is really cool. And when I used to teach grade 1 writing, which I did for very many years, being able to highlight that with a text of my choosing, any old text that I can throw in is phenomenal, right? And it's great for the kids as well. So there's mainstream applications. The other thing we've got what's called line focus, right? So if I turn on line focus, you'll see, and again, this is imitating what teachers will do, that is covering parts of the text and only showing the text that we're actually working with, right? So now when it reads, it's actually reading in a narrow band.
I played tag with her. I tagged her 10 times, but she tried to tag me with her tail 11 times, and so she beat me.
For the rest of us, I might slow that down if you don't mind. But yeah, so again, it's imitating what teachers do. How am I going for time? 4 minutes left. Gosh, man, I've got like 90 slides. Hilarious. Okay, doesn't matter. Yeah, so, okay. So, here we go. Are you ready? Here we go. So, we've also got picture dictionary. So now when I click on a word, I can listen to that word rather than the whole text.
Months.
All right? But some of the words actually have a little picture prompt. Okay, yeah, so a student can get hooked on a word, they can hear it, but they can also get, as I said, a picture prompt, which is going to help them. And when we look at something like played has so many potential, because this isn't contextualizing, all right? So played has so many different potential definitions there that it's bringing up a number for those students. Now, the next scenario I want to share, and this is close to my heart because I spent years in Asia teaching EAL, English as an Additional Language, in case you didn't know that one, there you go. EAL and ESL. I want to show you the translate features. So what happens now is when I get to, let's imagine that I am a little Korean boy who's come recently to Australia, or maybe he's coming from a Korean language household. He's come to school. He's not got any sort of cognitive impairment or anything like that. He's just struggling with the language. What happens for him now is he's actually able to choose his language. Okay, so in this case, he's choosing Korean. So he's got a drop-down menu here that he can choose from, and he finds his own language. And now when he clicks on one of his words, and have a look at holidays, you can guess which one is the teacher, by the way. There's a woman throwing a mobile phone in the air. But he can actually listen to this word
Holidays.
in English, but read it and listen to it in Korean.
휴일.
And he can also translate that entire document into Korean. And the parts of speech are identified in Korean. It depends on the language. I don't want to set you up for, you're going to go in and look at, Somali or something and it's not going to be there. But it's showing the parts of speech there in Korean. And when we play this,
지난 크리스마스 휴일 나는 내 강아지 브랜디와 함께 연주. 나는 그녀에게 물을 부었다. 나는 그녀를 씨름하고 나는 그녀와 함께 축구를 했다.
So if you spoke Korean, you'd be very impressed by that. Because it's... Genuinely, it's an amazing translation tool. I'm not going to compare it to the one that you know about, which is probably on your phone. This is even better, all right? I promise. And I don't just say that because I'm branded. All right, so I'm almost out of time. Oop, wrong one. I'm almost out of time, so I do want to just tell you how you get this. First of all, it's available in Office 365, which every education department in Australia has actually made available to their students. Whether the students have turned it on or not, it's there. So it's available in Office 365, but it's also available for free through Office Online. So you can go and make a free account. It sits in Word Online, it sits in OneNote Online and other tools as well. Immersive Reader is in Outlook Online, and it's starting to turn up in your mobile phone apps and things like that as well. It's also available in Teams. We are very friendly. We play well with the other kids, so it's available in your iPad and your Mac as well. And what's really cool is we've built this into Minecraft, right? So Minecraft Education Edition has, and they've even got like, you know, see the picture dictionary has pictures of creepers and the mushrooms and things like this. So that's in there as well, right? So in the Education Edition, so don't go and look up your normal version of Minecraft and tell me it doesn't work. We're also putting it into VR. So the ability to actually have text the size of, that is the immersive reader, accessing text the size of billboards and things like that is really quite cool as well. So keep an eye out for that one. That's being researched at the moment, but it is available. And we've made it free. This API is free. Anybody, whether you're a university, whether you're a business, you can take the immersive reader API and drop it into your app. Okay, so that's something that's really cool as well. Really quickly, I'll just say we've partnered with Made by Dyslexia in the UK. We've partnered with Code Red over here. I do want to also quickly, and David Masters said hi to everybody, but he also asked me to please let you know that codejumper.com, the Code Jumper tools, if you haven't seen this coding for the blind and coding for blind children is available, and it's about to be launched. So keep an eye out for that, and please watch this video as you access my slides later. I think you'll find it quite impressive. Finally, let me just take you to my last slide, and then I'll jump out of here. There's a couple more slides that I did want to share with you, just quickly, and that is that the Inclusive Deployment Guide for schools is available as well, because there's nothing worse than teachers finding out about this stuff, getting back and their IT guy goes, huh? So it helps teachers to, or IT guys in schools to access it. I've done some workshops, online webinars with AdSet, so please feel free to access those as well. I've got some courses there you can scroll through and have a look. And then lastly, I guess I just wanted to make myself available to you again through social media. So again, on that final slide there, please reach out to me, because I would genuinely love to be in touch with you guys. I would genuinely love to be part of this community and, you know, use Microsoft's corporate clout to do what you want to do, right? Which would be awesome, which would make learning more accessible. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.